Good morning. I'm going to do a little bit of a different scope today. We've used this truth bomb before too, to meditate before you activate. Meditate first. Connect with your sense of all that is first before you do anything else today. Yes, I'm wearing an apron. Meditate before you activate, okay? Good morning. Good morning. I don't know if this light's going to work. That's a little too dark. Hang on while I figure out this lighting situation. Hold on. So, welcome to my kitchen. We've had and that light's not going to work either. Hang on. I'm going to figure this out for us real quick. Actually, let me try one more thing. I probably should have done this before I signed on, right? Be patient. Be patient. It'll work out. We'll figure this out. Okay. Yeah, that's better. So, I wanted to not read from a book today because there's been an awful lot of grief and loss incidents. Thanks. With there's a woman in what we would consider our perifem, although I didn't know her very well. I know that a lot of you do know her from the Koya Book Club and things like that. And then this morning we woke up to terrible news from Belgium with more bombings and more deaths and more injury, things of that nature, which are difficult to handle. Because what happens with incidents like that is, even though we don't know the people involved, we may not know them at all, or we may have some loose connection to them through Koya or Sarah Ballard, or our Perry group. It impacts us, and it can impact us really hard depending on our own level of grief and loss that we're carrying around with us on a daily basis. So it can be hard it can be hard to figure out what's our pain, what's our old grief, and what's our current pain for someone else's struggle. Hi, Nina. It can be hard to separate out in, when grief and loss things happen. Hi. And then, terrorist attacks frighten me, make me feel threatened, even though I'm very far away from any likely attack. Atlanta could be attacked, and we're very far from it. But you know what I'm talking about. So there's been a lot of grief and loss lately, and I wanted to talk to you about how that fits in with the things that we talk about every day with the Big Magic book, with our Tao Te Ching study, our Byron Katie stuff. And of course, Byron Katie would say that it's just all our stories being activated, and that's true. We all have stories around grief and loss. We all have stories about terrorism and fires in the home and, scary things that happen to us and those that we care about, and even people we don't know, like I said. So it's important to try to recognize, it's not always easy, but it's important to try to recognize what's your pain, what's their pain, and where you can be effective, because there's so many layers that happen. So it's important to meditate for yourself and pray through your own process before you start praying for others. If you jump the gun and immediately start praying for others, your own grief doesn't get the witnessing and the time that it deserves. It also can cloud what you're praying for others. Effective prayer, in my definition of prayer, is holding the image of where of, let's see, holding the image and the energy of restoration for whoever I'm praying for. So someone suffers a grievous loss, and, it's terrible, and then I need to move through my grief about their grief first. So same thing with an international tragedy like Belgium, or a personal tragedy like what happened in our little Perry group. Hi, Sarah. We're just talking about grief and loss because there's been so much of it lately. And I think it's still important to access your creativity while you're going through that. So for me, when something like that happens, I have to process through my own reaction to it. And my own reaction to some terrible news is going to be influenced, like I said, by grief that I haven't processed. So unprocessed grief just stays. And when something else happens, you have a trigger to the first level of grief and then the new grief on top of it. And if you have multiple layers of that, then hearing about someone else's tragedy is really going to impact you because it's triggering all those layers of unprocessed grieving that has to be done. So let's say, like most of us, you have a few layers of unprocessed grief and someone else's pain triggers your pain. Your imagining of their pain triggers your pain and exacerbates all of that. How I think of prayer, our own grief, our own reactions have to be processed first, and then we enter into prayer for someone else. If I don't deal with myself first, then I complicate my prayers for them, because I'll say again that my definition of prayer, yes, absolutely, of course you would. Of course you would. Death that's close to us, and then death that's far away from us but is on a massive scale. There's 28 people dead in Belgium today at the airport, okay? We all have to fly at some point, usually. So here we go again with our terror about terrorists and all those families and all those people, and it can be, so horrible. So how do you do that? Well, you still stay in creation. Our body wants to lock up and freeze or go out and start fights and be active. A way to take control when you know you've been hit by a tragedy is to do something creative. So you're going to make sauerkraut with me because that's what I'm doing to be creative this morning. So I didn't want to sit at a desk and read to you from a book and ignore all the stuff that was going on, because creativity, as I was saying, you've got to process your own grief first. Doing something creative can help keep your body moving as it's processing its grief that's related to your own grief. It is for preventing cabbage from getting on me. We're in my kitchen. You're in my kitchen. Oh, there's my dirty stove. Let's not turn the camera that way. And there's my living room. This is all my house, one big square. So it doesn't do us any good to do these book studies without putting that stuff into action. Okay, so creativity is an important response to processing grief. Some of my best work has come out of some of my worst pain. If I had frozen up and allowed myself to stay frozen, I wouldn't have been able to access anything beautiful out of several things that were, particularly tragic. And when I pray for someone else going through a tragedy, I want to be sure that channel is clear. Hi, Linda. And I don't want to say the word clean, but maybe pure, untainted by my own grief. Because when I pray for someone in tragedy, I pray holding the image of restoration. So I know right now their life is in a state of destruction. I also have a very firm belief that restoration is available to them in time. They've got to go through, they've got to walk through the stuff first. But restoration is always there, resurrection, redemption, whatever it is. But I want to pray with the image and the energy contributing to their moving through the process and achieving restoration at some point in the future, which, is completely out of my control. But to do that, I have to go through these processes first. So let's do some creation while we are grieving. The act of creation is affirming that, okay, so when someone dies, we're just talking about grief and loss and how I pray, which is to pray with the image of restoration and the importance of processing our own grief before we start praying for others' grief and loss. When people, I am too. I know that you have a heavy heart with good reason. So there's the death of 2 children in a fire with someone that we are somewhat associated with. And there's those of us who knew her, not me, but knew her personally and very well. And then there's another terrorist tragedy this morning, which is utterly and completely horrifying. So, like I said earlier, you can freeze up. You can go into fight or flight when you're grieving or when you're hit by a tragedy elsewhere in the world. You've got to find some way to keep your balance and to give appropriate time to your grief so that you can then give appropriate time to prayer for other people's grief. Does that make sense? If you try to jump in and pray for them first, you're missing a huge section and actually a huge opportunity. And if you meditate before you activate, your prayer for them, the energy will be more powerful and far more productive for them. So what do you do? I'm going to chop some carrots, but what do you do, or what can you envision doing when you are hit by someone else's tragedy? How do you keep yourself in motion? You can dance. This is probably loud, so I apologize for that. You can take a walk. The first thing that you need to do is acknowledge that your grief is triggered by someone else's grief. Yes, help yourself first. Right. And with what we talk about here every day, putting creativity into action, putting all the stuff we read in Big Magic into action means that you do something when you are grieving. You don't wait to create till you feel awesome, because we don't always feel awesome, correct? I need to pay attention. I'm going to cut my finger. Right? These things happen and we feel terrible. We feel crushed. We think about our own children dying. We think about times in our lives when we've experienced devastation through death. When I was an EMT, I witnessed so much incredible tragedy firsthand, enough that it nearly destroyed me, which is where I learned a lot about what to do with grief and loss. I didn't have good teachers at the time, but I had good teachers later. So we're making sauerkraut, so I start with chopping carrots. Sauerkraut and grieving. Chopping up organic carrots kind of small. A little bit smallish. And then I'm throwing them over here in this bowl. It's Julia Child Grief and Loss Day. Although I can't manage to speak with her voice, because her voice is unreplicatable for me, unless I was Dan Aykroyd and I was using a Bass-O-Matic. Do you guys remember that? I'm going to take this is kind of a small head of cabbage. Normally I wouldn't. This is a great knife. It's Japanese. Oh my gosh. There's a name on here somewhere. It's a Japanese knife and it's heavy and awesome. This is really too small. If you're going to make sauerkraut, do it upright and get yourself some big heads. That's, yeah. And then save these leaves because you're going to want them here in a minute. This is only going to make, yeah, this is only going to make like one. We'll be lucky if this fills these 2 jars. But you don't need anything special. It's another thing I wanted to demonstrate. When you're grieving and you're hurting, you don't need to go get a bunch of anything special. There's probably something, if you like to cook as a stress reliever, there's probably something you can cook in your kitchen right now. There's probably pens, pencils. You can write a poem. You can write how you're feeling. You can write how when someone else dies, it makes you aware of your own mortality and the mortality of your family. And the fact that, yes, you can make malas. You can draw doodles. You can go out and plant something. Actually planting something. I'm going to use it as a lid. I'll show you here in just a second. So just save a couple of cabbage leaves. And then we're going to chop it because we're making sauerkraut here. Some people don't use the core. I do because I like it. It makes a salty, like pickly chunk. But I do cut this piece off. So let's cut that off. When terrorism... Okay, so first of all, what do? We all fall into that. We got to live like we're dying. You know, we all get motivated to live each day as if it were our last. And then we tend to lose that. So when something happens, especially when it involves children, then, you know, we really freak out. Because we know that we don't have any control. We have only control over what's going on in us, how we take care of our grief, how we pray about others' grief. But it brings home to us in a very system-shocking way that we are at the mercy, it feels like, at the mercy of external forces that can destroy us at a moment's notice. That's terrifying. Who wouldn't be terrified at that thought? It's normal. Yes, there is no time to waste. An incident of tragedy can be highly motivating to get off your ass and do the things that you think you would like to do in this life. So I'm just going to chop this cabbage in half. Make sure it's steady. I'm going to chop it in thirds, I guess. So, when I was... Yes, it can bring to you a feeling that everything you have is precious. It can bring to you a feeling, the awareness, I should say, of what really is precious, of what really is important. Because I woke up this morning pissed off at USAA for, our account was hacked. They promised me a check that I had out to the state of Georgia would be paid. I'd be charged a fee. Then I could call and have the fee reversed. And that's not what happened. They didn't pay the check. So that was my obsession this morning. And then I see the thing about Brussels. And it's like, well, all right. Now we've got the thing with Lindsay and her family. The thing with another terrorist attack. Who gives a shit about a bounce check? Really? It points out to you what's truly precious. It brings home to you what truly matters. What truly matters to you. But please, I'm going to say this repetitively because it's so important. You have to care for your own grief first. Yes, a bounce check at USAA, even though they told me they wouldn't, is not worth my life energy. You're having issues with your fridge. Yeah. It puts things in perspective. Thank you, Betty. That's the word I was looking for. It helps you rank your priorities. I think because I've been exposed to so much death through my work and through my personal life. So here's what, I chopped up that section of cabbage in about leaves about that size. My very first professional job was picking up dead people in Fort Worth, Texas. I was an EMT, but the ambulance company I worked for had what's called a body contract. So when the funeral homes got, when they got overwhelmed and the mortuaries couldn't pick up dead people, we got sent to pick up dead people. So I got to witness all the different ways you can die. I got to witness having to defend ourselves against family members who were acting out their pain and grief on us, including police escorts sometimes. So here's this cabbage chopped up. Okay, just like that. And just ruffling it into the bowl. And we're going to smash it up here in a second. Making bread is another good thing to do with grief because you get to physically mash up stuff. So I was 18 years old when I was doing that job. I didn't know shit. I knew shit about my own personal grief and loss, but I didn't know that I needed to deal with my grief and loss before I dealt with others' grief and loss. So when you find yourself powerfully impacted by pain that isn't directly yours, it can give you information that you have some untended grief and loss that needs to be dealt with. You have some, you can clean when you're grieving, you can cook, you can paint, you can garden, you can change the oil in your car. You just need to move. Perspective, yes, it really brings home perspective. So movement will help your body with all that intense emotion. Yes, cleaning, perfect. Dancing, making sauerkraut, cleaning the litter boxes. It helps keep you present in your body while you're grieving because grieving can knock us way out of our body. And I'm just rambling here, guys, so if you have questions, here's the core of that cabbage. I'm just going to slice it in half and put it in the jar because I like it like that. Just like that. I'm going to leave it in chunks. If there wasn't a reason for your trip to Virginia, then life is meaningless. I think that life is moving, and I think that we are one. And certain things are close enough in the timeline that we work together when we know something's going to happen and we're going to need a great deal of support. And we end up in the right place at the right time, like that. If we're living the kind of lives, yes. If we're living the kind of lives where we're in that flow of synchronicity, we go visit the person who's going to desperately need support a few weeks later or a few days later. We meet the person a few hours before their tragedy happens. Grieving is so foreign to you because you've never lost anyone close to you. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes. And the important part for those people who are going to be the helpers is multi-layered. So I'm just chopping this cabbage like this as we have our sauerkraut grief discussion. The important part for Sarah and Roseanne and other people, so that's, Roseanne right there is what I'm trying to say. That's the important part. You remember, but you focus, you have to deal with your own grief first, then you call up her happy face. because she will need that energy. Yes, yes. We know that if we haven't experienced grief, we will. But you hold the image of that happiness, the happiness you've ever seen. So for anybody, if you've ever seen them happy, that's where you want to hold your prayer energy. So that they have a future anchor. Yes. You're providing the energy it's almost like you become the light shining toward the future. You know at some point through this processing, we all have choices. And some people don't come out of heavy grief, and some people do. And I often think the difference is the people who do make it have somebody holding the memory or the possibility that they will be happy again and they will be strong again. So here's our slices, and we're just dumping this into the bowl. But you can't be that stability and that light for their future if you're lost in the darkness of your own grief. You have to witness and process your own grief first to be totally effective. This is just my opinion. So even things like the tragedy in Brussels, which was just like the tragedy in Paris, which was just like the tragedy in New York. Yeah. Yeah. When people are in the darkness of grief, we can be a light for them when they're ready to move, if we have processed our own stuff. Yeah. Yes. So it's appropriate to use the opportunity to deal with your own unresolved grief, to deal with reprioritizing your life, if that's what needs to happen. So when I was, so I started out so all those dead people I saw went from the ages of 18 to 20, because I quit doing that work when I got pregnant with Morgan and was a stay-at-home mom for a long time. So those things, so I never lost, yes, he won't be. I never lost that sense of death can get you at any time. You can be at home watching TV, and it will get you when it's your time. It also made it very clear to me that when it's your time, it's your time. Because the bizarre ways that people die, the sense of it, yeah. It also was my first experiences with consciousness leaving the body and hanging around for a while, which was, let me tell you, quite disorienting to me as a teenager. So I never fully lost that sense that life can get you and that life can be topsy-turvy at any point. But, it fades. You can't really, and you can't really, live every single day like that, or you'd just lose your mind and you'd never leave your house, which wouldn't help you, because if it's your time, it's your time. But when my friend Jana died, Jana Klusman, you can Google it if you want to, Jana and Andy Klusman were driving home from Cheyenne, Wyoming from their son's birthday party. So from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Fort Collins, Colorado, it's about an hour. And they were driving on the smaller highway, not the main interstate. Their van was T-boned by a multiple offender drunk driver, and she was killed. And he was almost killed. And their children were okay, and Grandma was in the back seat, and she was okay. But Jana died, and she was just a few years older than me. So I'm lumping along in this career that I hate. This has happened to me more than once. And she was just a few years older than I was, and she was killed, gone, just like that. And I really cared about her. She was a person that had been in my life for a super long time, I want to say 8 years, and we weren't like best friends, but Jana was always there. We all as a group went to their house for parties, that kind of relationship. Her death really brought it home to me. It's okay. That I was lingering in a career from fear. And I started asking myself that question that Steve Jobs asks. If I died today, am I happy with what I'm doing? And that's not exactly how he puts it, but I think it's, if today were the last day of my life, would I be doing what I'm doing? Would I be making sauerkraut for you in front of you if today were the last day of my life? I would. I totally would. I'm doing exactly what I want to do. But the shock of her death and the senselessness of it was like a laser in my life. And you can use that tragic events for your life as well. As you're processing through your stuff, as you then get to a point of peace where you can hold uplifting energy for the people struggling. Thanks. I love you guys too a whole lot. Otherwise I wouldn't be standing here babbling at you like this. Look at your life, and if you died today, are you doing what you want to do? Are you content with what you're doing today? And if you answer that question no more than 3 to 5 days in a row, you've got some problems. Of course you're going to have days where you're like, fuck this shit. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do what I'm doing today. But if you have to answer that question with the word no every day, you need to take a look at that. Because that is a bullshit way to live. And I get very frustrated. This is my own personal issue because I have a story about how people ought to live. I get very frustrated when I hear someone complaining for years about a situation that they don't like. Yes, a cupcake is in order. Actually, 2. 2 cupcakes are in order. Nora Ephron, if you don't know her, she wrote When Harry Met Sally. That's right. Nora Ephron said when she was dying of throat cancer, she's dead now, that she wished she'd eaten more hot dogs. One of her regrets is she wished she'd eaten more hot dogs. She loved hot dogs. And she didn't eat that many of them. And then she had throat cancer and she couldn't eat. And she was like, why didn't I eat more hot dogs? Why did I stay too long in a job that I hated? Why do you live in a place you don't love? If there's family and that's the, the offsetting principle, then that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about continuing a life that is not bringing you joy, continuing a life where you're not expressing 100% authentically. Yes, get 2, 1 for each. And, shit, Sarah, you're going to make me choke up. Well, the sauerkraut needs salt, so I guess I can just ball into the bowl. Yum it. And 1 for me. Better make it 3. Eat more cupcakes for crying out loud. Eat a goddamn hot dog if you like hot dogs. In this bowl of sauerkraut, yes, go get a cupcake. I'm going to tell Heath to pick up cupcake mix on his way home because we have to do the gluten-free one. They're not as easy to buy in our, our wilderness here. Cupcakes for everybody. Eat all the cupcakes. This bowl's going to get 2 tablespoons of Himalayan pink salt. You can use sea salt. Do not use table salt. Do not use kosher salt. Pure salt. All the cupcakes. So we're going to put 2 tablespoons in this cabbage here. Oh, and if you're an oil person, you can use Northern Lights Black Spruce. Oh, stress away for grief. Tranquil, you can use for grief. Tranquil. Joy. This is my second choice. My third choice, White Angelica and Joy, preferably together. But my first choice is always for the heart. Anything to do with the heart is rose, always. I know it's like you might as well buy cocaine. But cocaine won't help you heal, and this will. But if that's out of the budget, go with Joy. It's got some rose on. You've taken on world and others' grief, sadness in the past as your own. Yes, you can hold it when you... That's a really good point, Michelle. Yes, you can hold it all. You can hold the happiness and the sadness. And as I was saying, let me put the salt in so it can start. We're putting the salt in the cabbage so that the salt starts to make the cabbage sweat. You need the liquid out of the cabbage for the brining liquid. So I'm putting actually probably a little bit more than 2 tablespoons in here. So I was saying, process your own grief. And then, get yourself in a place where you can envision the grieving person's. Yes. Yeah. They're very similar. You could send her a bottle of joy. You can drop ship it, Sarah. You can go into your account and send it directly to her. Drop ship her a bottle of joy. Yes. You can hold... So you process your grief. You get to a place where you can hold an uplifting prayer for their grief. Okay? Then you take on the weight of the world and you pray for all the grieving. All right? Oh, thank God. I process my grief. I help with your grief. Then I spread all that energy out to anyone on the planet who is grieving right now. I've told you that a lot of times I got through dark times knowing that people were praying. So after as you're praying for the particular person, Lindsay and her family, the particular people, the people in Belgium who are suffering tremendously right now, you just make it even bigger. And you pray for anybody on the planet who is in the throes of grief right now. You're welcome. Love you too. So I'm going to start mixing this cabbage and salt. So then what happens is you become a conduit for the energy that people need to achieve restoration. The energy that people need to make a new normal. Oh, bless her. Bless her heart. So much loss. So much loss. Because it happens. There's no way to get away from loss. There is no life without loss. You're crashing the shit out of this cabbage, which is why it's a great activity to do when you're upset. You just have to smash the hell out of it. You're mixing the salt with the cabbage and the carrots to start pulling the moisture out of the vegetables, because that's what helps pickle them. Okay, so I go through my tears. I identify what's my pain and what's the other person's pain. And then I remember when I saw them happy. And I hold that energy, and I make my heart chakra, my heart center, however you want to think about that. I breathe in and I feel the pain, and I breathe out and I stretch. I literally imagine the energy around my heart getting bigger and bigger with every breath. Breathing in pain of grief, breathing out peace of healing. In pain, it transforms in the light and it goes out as light. And this is my imagination. Maybe it's doing something, maybe it's not. I don't really care. It makes me feel better. So I feel the pain of Lindsay's loss, and I breathe that in, and I exhale out the restoration of Lindsay's life and her family's life. So I breathe in the pain in Belgium and the fear and the death, and I breathe out the light, and like a phoenix, I breathe out the restoration and the resurrection energy. The life that always follows the death, always. And then I breathe in the pain of anyone on this planet right now, person or animal, who is suffering. I breathe in their suffering and breathe out the wish and the thought for their relief, the wish and the thought for their happiness. So may all beings be peaceful. May all beings feel happiness. May I feel happiness. May Lindsay feel happiness and her husband. May the people in Belgium feel happiness. May all the grieving people feel the healing that's all around them. May all the people in Belgium be aware of the prayers of the people of the world who are reaching out to support them in an energetic way. So breathing in pain, breathing out peace. And you do it over and over and over. And when your own tears come for the losses and the people that you've lost and the death that you've experienced, you breathe through your tears, your own pain, and you breathe out to yourself the knowledge that it's temporary. The pain of losing people is temporary, and we never really get over it. But we can use it to pray for ourselves. We can use it to extend peace to others, whether we know them or not. Otherwise, our tendency is to get lost in our own unresolved grief and stay too long in the darkness. And that's when things can get really weird, and it can have a terrible toll on our bodies. So if you're grieving over the people in Belgium, or if you're grieving over a recent death, find something to create. For me, that creation is sauerkraut today. And I may create something out after this. I don't know. But I'm going to spend a lot of time today. Actually, I'll probably go out in the garden and do something out there. And I'm going to spend a lot of time today breathing in the pain of other people and extending my heart around that pain so that I can breathe peace out into the world too. Because I'm sure that you've had that experience where this is the first time you've breathed it in, that you've let their grief in. Yes, how brave of you, Sarah. It takes courage to breathe in the pain of someone else. It's that thing we've talked about before where if I lose faith, you'll let me borrow yours. If you're grieving and I'm not, I'll loan you my strength. I'll loan you my knowledge that it's temporary. And that beautiful things can and will come of death and loss and grief. But you can't see that when you're in the midst of it. So I'll hold that image for you. To me, that's prayer. You can't see that someday it's going to get better. So I'll hold that image for you until you can. Till you get there. $400 people last night. That's beautiful. So everyone on here has experienced death and loss and different degrees of tragic events in our lives. And the grieving process is critical because what we started the conversation with that. If you don't do your own grieving process, then the next time someone dies, you'll be lost again in your triggered pain that's being triggered by their tragic loss. They make wooden things to mash this cabbage with, but what would be the fun in that? There's no fun taking a stick to it. Take your own hands to it. When we let ourselves feel the pain of other people's grief, it keeps our heart fluid and soft. When we resist other people's grief, it hardens our heart, and that hurts us, like physically hurts us. See how it's starting to change colors and get really wet looking? That's the salt pulling the moisture out of the cabbage. I would rather have a soft heart that can feel other people's pain than the alternative, which is what I lived in way too long. I kept people at arm's length too. But what happened is when you keep their grief at arm's length, you also keep their love at arm's length. So you don't get a full experience of other people. It's intimacy. It's all intimacy. When we let in the pain, we also let in the love. If we hold ourselves against the pain of loving another human being, we also don't get to experience the love. Unfortunately, it's a package deal, and you don't get to pick and choose. So I've got some little chunks here. I'm just going to kind of separate those because I want to be sure that all of you don't want a whole lot of air pockets in your sauerkraut. Yes. Well, letting in love sometimes is even harder than letting in their pain because it hits us in our heart spot even more. That's the bodhicitta, the soft heart. The soft heart that can breathe in pain and be okay because, as Michelle said, you eventually get to the part where I can hold your pain and not lose touch of my own joy. And I can hold a layer of your pain on top of a layer of my joy in knowing that your pain is temporary and is bringing you gifts if you have the eyes to see them. Or if you have the willingness to see the gifts that grief can bring. And it sounds so counterintuitive, right? Someone just died. It doesn't feel like there could be any gift in that, but there is. There totally is. So this is getting pretty soppy now. So I'm just going to take a jar. Oh, Tanya, that's horrible. Periscope in the shower. Aaron, we don't know what the gifts are. I think they're individual. But the gift of grief, here's my perspective on it. Yes. The gift that we can get from grief is it makes our own... Oh, Aaron, I was just saying that it makes our own... Yes, exactly, Sarah. They're not comfortable feeling their own emotions. When you're comfortable feeling your own emotions... Oh, to listen. Then you can be comfortable holding other people's emotions. Aaron, I was saying that... or what I wanted to say is that the gift in grief is that it squashes our heart and makes us drop our defenses. So we can feel more grief, which ultimately means we can feel more love and more intimate connection with the people in our lives. So I'm just squashing this cabbage still. Yes, and if you can't process your own emotions, yes, then you can't process other people's emotions. So there's always a gift in death because of what it does to us, if we'll let it. Sometimes we won't let it, and then we end up with complicated grief. There's a website I want to refer you to. Yes, not a broken heart, a heart that is broken open. A heart that becomes so huge, it can hold my pain, your pain, and the world's pain, and never lose track of joy that's underneath it all. That is true. You absolutely can have that experience of holding all your own pain, all of other people's pain, all the pain in the whole world in this loving embrace, which sounds cheesy and like a bad Hallmark card, but it's true. It's true. But you've got to be so comfortable with your own tears first. You You've got to start with yourself on all of this. And Sarah, it's courageous of you to let yourself experience breathing in other people's pain and modeling that for people on Periscope. Okay. So we have crushed the shit out of this cabbage. With a jar. Oh, yes, thank you, Erin. It's called Remembering for Good. You can find her. It's very therapeutic. Fall apart, Sarah. Don't. Fall apart. Don't try not to fall apart. Fall to pieces. Good morning. Rememberingforgood.com. You can find that lady, can't remember her name, on Facebook. She helped me a ton after my dad died. A ton. I had lots of email conversations with her, and her approach to grieving helped me a lot. We're making sauerkraut as a way of staying active while we're grieving some personal losses and the tragedies in Belgium this morning. Yes. You can fall apart internally. Because what happens with the shock of grief is our stories all fall apart, right? Yeah, good. Our stories about life fall apart. That life is safe, that life is predictable, that if we stay at this job, this is going to happen and that's going to happen and we're going to pay off our house. Yes, rememberingforgood.com. And if that's not the website, if I've remembered it wrong, she's on Facebook and the page is Remembering for Good. She helped me a ton because I lost all my dogs and my dad all in an 18-month period. And I got married. Yeah. So, staying active, doing something creative when you feel the pain. It was horrible. I really thought I was going to die. Because it triggered all my unprocessed grief too. I know, right? It just does. Yeah. Oh yeah, the same thing happened to Aaron. Dog, cat, brother-in-law, and a terrible move, and all in the same year. So we have liquid forming here. Let me get a spoon and I'll show you. Don't use metal with your sauerkraut, just wood. I don't know if you can see that. See that dripping off of there? That's from the salt in the cabbage. We've talked too before, remember, about how if I fall down, I need the people around me to have two good legs. If I break my leg, I need your leg to be sturdy so that I have something to lean on. And we make our own legs sturdy for other people. Perfect. Any kind of artistic project, any kind of cooking project, gardening project. Move your body. Do something creative when you're hurting, when your heart is hurting and you're breathing in the pain of grief for yourself and others and the world. You've got to be in motion, otherwise you can get locked down. So the way I make sure that my two legs are sturdy when you're grieving is to do what I'm doing right now. I'm making something. I'm breathing in the pain. Thank you. I'm breathing in my pain and out with peace. I'm breathing in your pain. I'm expanding my heart to hold it and out with peace. Yes, I've done that. I've done that for months. Then I'm breathing in everybody's pain for the whole world and imagining that my energy stretches to surround the whole world with an image of anyone grieving, finding comfort. Have you had that experience before where you're grieving and all of a sudden out of nowhere you see something or you just get a sense of some comfort? I really believe that's from someone praying for your comfort. Our feathered wings wrap the world in comfort. Absolutely gorgeous image. Absolutely gorgeous image. Thank you. That was a beautiful image. Our feathered wings can provide that comfort. You felt a hug. Yeah, I felt a hug before. I really think that's because when we really get broken open by grief, there is somebody at all times praying for your happiness somewhere. Somewhere, always, somebody's praying for you. So, okay, so here's our cabbage and carrot mix. And I'm going to get a plastic... Oh, hold on, I got to get my canning funnel. Watch out, cat. So I use a wide mouth metal. After I just told you not to use metal, I do use a wide mouth canning funnel for this process. And just a regular scoop. Thank you. I want to say to all of us, the divine in me sees the divine in you. Suck nom and all that. So then you want to scoop all the way down to the bottom and get, because there's a lot of liquid at the bottom now. There's, quite a bit of liquid. So you want to make sure you're getting that. And I'm just putting it in and all that. Peace, love, and all that. And this is a quart, ball jar, mason jar. And you just start loading it. Scoop down to the bottom and get that brine water. And we're going to fill this jar, and it's probably going to fill, I'm going to say it's probably going to fill this quart jar and maybe about half of this, quart, and then maybe is this a 2-quart jar? I don't know. It's going to fill the big one and part of the little one. How about that? It's truly the most important thing you can do is process your own grief. Namaste, peace, love, and all that. It doesn't matter. It's a freaking jar. It doesn't matter what size it is. The point's not the size. The point is to process grief by being creative. By doing something. Or as we like to say around here, might as well do something while you're doing nothing. And a bag of chips. I'm just jabbing this stuff in here with this wooden spoony thing. You want to really pack it in there because you don't want air pockets. Breathe in the pain. Release out peace. So here's where we're at. And I'm going to jab it and squash it in there. And it's really going to shrink down. And this takes 4 to 6 weeks to be, pickled where I want it. So I try to make a batch and then 2 weeks later make another batch. Some people, I like it pretty sour, so I let it go longer. But you can eat it after 3 or 4 weeks. But the stuff in it that is helpful for your gut bacteria, your microbiome is, better left to develop for a longer period of time. I just got cabbage in my... Oh, I made a batch about 5 days ago, and I can't hardly wait for it to be ready. It's really nice when... We've had the stomach flu, and so that's why I really was sad that I didn't have a current. Yeah, I'll make some. Yeah. I was really sad I didn't have a batch already ready, because you can eat 1 or 2 tablespoons of this a day to help your gut bacteria. And then when we had the stomach flu, I was like, crap, I don't have any sauerkraut to help restore my insides. So see how much is getting in there? It's like pretty, it holds a lot. But since you're only eating 1 or 2 tablespoons a day, 1 jar lasts a long time. And after it's done fermenting, you put it in the fridge and it'll last. Well, it never lasts here very long because I always eat it. But I've heard that it can last 6 months to a year. I haven't tested that theory, so I don't really know. Gosh, it might all fit in there. There's lots of water at the bottom. That's good. Try to get organic cabbage, fresh. Yeah, the juice. Just like a tablespoon. It's a couple of tablespoons a day when I have it here. Yeah. So not a whole ton. What is 2 tablespoons? Is that a quarter of a cup or an eighth of a cup? I really like the taste of it because homemade sauerkraut, yeah, again, it doesn't matter. It's a detail. Homemade sauerkraut is not harsh or bitter. Yeah, it has a sour, but it also has a sweet taste to it. So again, I'm just jabbing away at this jar, which is keeping the grief moving around. Oh, did you see that? We got some syrup. Oh, so I was saying use fresh cabbage because then you'll get a lot of brine. I missed something. If your cabbage is super dry, you know that it's like ridiculously old. Good. Good. Okay, so yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to quite get it all in this one jar. Hold on. Got a little air pocket down here. Let's see if we can. I'd really like to get it all in one jar because it doesn't look like there's enough really to mess with the other jar. Okay, see, look at all that fluid. Look at all that liquid. See it? Ah! That's okay. I'll watch the replay and grab it. I missed it again! So I knew what I did not want to do was to sit over there and read a book today. Okay. One more time. I'm watching the screen. I'm not going to take my eyes off the screen. Ready, go. I'm waiting. Oh, it's really hard not to. Oh. Hilarious. Okay, yeah, I can't do it. Okay, so this is packed. We're going to have to. It's not as funny the third time. We're going to have to use this jar too. So I'm just going to pull some of that out. I'm really glad you're able to come make sauerkraut with me today. Yeah, there's no reason that we can't have joy while we're experiencing sadness. There's no reason that we can't make something beautiful out of something horrible. And in fact, my best beautiful things have come from my most horrible things. You're welcome, Jody. I needed it for myself, too. I needed to make something. So, a book that we're going to read later says that our immune systems recognize when we stop giving birth to children and start to dial the life back. As long as we're creating, our immune system thinks we're still giving birth. So it's very important to me when I've heard or been exposed to a lot of stories about death that I give birth to something, even something as simple as a couple of jars of sauerkraut. I know that I'm telling my immune system that I'm still birthing. I'm still alive, immune system. I still have something to offer. I still need you functioning. So we actually did get a pretty good bit in this jar. Yeah, so I want to give birth when I'm surrounded by death. Because it's the natural order of things. Things die so that other things can be born. It's all energy and we're all connected in it. So some energy changes form so that other energy can come into form. Does that make sense to you? some energy changes so that it can be reformed into a different structure. And that can be a plant, a mala, a painting, a poem, a clean load of laundry. Cleaning house is creative. Cleaning house is very self-care-ish too. Yes, Lindsay has experienced a tragic amount of grief, and the best I can do for her is to give birth to something. Because if we're all one, if we accept that principle that we're all one, my giving birth to something in Georgia contributes to her future of birthing more things in Virginia, or West Virginia, wherever she's at. So here's where we're at with this jar. We have to find the beauty in the ugly or we'll die. We'll die before we die. And here's where we're at on this jar. So remember I told you to save those leaves? Oh God, my mom told me about your mala for the boys, and that is beautiful. That is giving birth. You're welcome. That is taking the energy, some of the energy of her boy's form, which has changed, and birthing it into some new form for her to hold. Okay, so we have our little cabbage leaf. That's now going to become my lid. Everyone falls in love with Sarah. How could you not fall in love with Sarah? How could you not? The woman is nothing but a love evoker. Yes, Sarah, I absolutely believe that's true. And which is what I mean about the soul synchronicity of you being there at that time. Okay, so see, now we have a little cabbage air barrier. The whole point of fermenting foods is you don't want air. Yes, very sacred. You don't want air getting in here. Absolutely, I believe that's true. So put your little cabbage leaf lid. The boys gave you a gift for their mother. Ugh! You made me cry again. Because I knew she was going to need something to hold. Here's my other cabbage leaf. Cabbage leaf and crying. That's what we're doing on our cooking show today. We're tearing cabbage leaves while we cry. I'm just packing it in on top. I really want to push it all the way out to the edges of the jar. Salt and salt. Tear salt and cabbage salt. I'm just working it from the top and pushing it down. Really pushing it down in there to get rid of the air. Don't want air in there. And look, there's so much liquid. This cabbage is so fresh. Look at all that liquid. Salt of the earth, yeah. He gave his most special bead to you to hold and create something. Ah! Oh. It's sweetly sad. Bittersweet, right? Bittersweet when anyone dies. Especially bittersweet when we lose children. Especially so young. I mean, losing the very young is so difficult. So difficult. So I'm actually pushing my little cabbage lid down until that water, that brine, comes up over the top of it. This is the perfect jar of sauerkraut. And it's because you're all here, I'm sure. Because it's never been this perfect. Enough liquid to cover my little cabbage cap. We've got all the air smashed out. Perfect. This is perfect. Okay. So see, I'm just pressing down and the air's bubbling up. Oh, it's going to be so good. It's going to be delicious. I've got another little leaf I'll just put in here. Okay, so the next thing is critical. I have to put something on top of the little cabbage cap to press it down, to hold it down. So that is where having twin granddaughters comes in handy, because I have tons of baby food jars. So take the baby food jar and we're just going to fill it with water for the weight. And we're not going to put it in there straight either, so don't panic. We're going to wrap it in plastic first. God, look at all my cat food bowls. You think I have a lot of cats? That's a lot of cat food over there. When you put your home on Periscope, you really get a different view of like, holy shit, I might need to organize. I just drank a cabbage leaf out of my tea. Cheers. I panicked for a second and thought it was a bug. Oh, that's the best compliment ever, Erin. Thank you. And I keep these here too. Just to call some little fairies. There's another one. Gross. Cabbage tea. Nope. Okay, so take your baby food jar. Fill it with water. People make I want it inside. I have more outside, but I want one inside. Fill it with water, cap it off tight. People make fermented foods sound so complicated, which is complete garbage because people have been fermenting foods since time began. So obviously it can't be that damn complicated. So all we've used today is stuff that should be around your house or is very easy to get at, the grocery store. You can even buy mason jars used at the junk store. Cabbage, carrots, and salt. That's it. It's really not complicated. So then I take some cling wrap to wrap the baby food jars in because they still have labeled junk on them, and I want to be sure that they are perfectly clean going into my sauerkraut here, because I want the good bacteria. I don't want the bad bacteria, and then I just give it a little twist. And then you just set it in here. And that's enough weight to keep the most important thing is keeping all your vegetables below that water line. I don't know if you can see the water line. See it coming up and down? So in 24 hours, I'm going to check this, and I'm going to keep double checking to more brine will form as the hours go by. So I want to make sure that all this vegetable is below the water because the water keeps the bad bacteria from growing. So just hold that. So super easy. And this is better than any acidophilus probiotic tablet you can take because this is stuff you made your own self with your own hands. You give birth to your own food, which nurtures your body and your soul at the same time. So then just twist that up. And boom. Bada bing, bada boom, you got yourself some sauerkraut. Look at all the water in there. Ew. You guys, our combined energy made the perfect jar of sauerkraut. And then the last step is coffee filters, because so what's going to happen, this is like prison hooch. This is how they make alcohol in prison. I used to work with guys in the Department of Corrections, and my dad was in prison, as some of you know. So I know how they do it. I also know that it's complete and utter crap that they don't get caught doing it, but whatever. So then you just take a clean coffee filter and put it over the top of all of that and tie it down with a piece of yarn or a rubber band. Actually, you want to use a rubber band because you want to be able to take the top off, because what can happen is this is going to start fermenting and it's going to bubble, it's going to squeak, and it's going to make all kinds of noises. It's going to foam like a rabid dog on top. It actually gets pretty gross. But as it foams, it's going to, soak this filter, and I like to change them. I don't think you have to change them, but I like to. So I'm going to track down some rubber bands. Same thing with this one. Now I'll show you the ones I made the other day so you can see what they look like now, about 5 days later. Oops, wrong cabinet. So here's the ones I made about 5 days ago. At some point, the water, the brine, just disappears. This still has some in it, but in the next few days, it'll be gone. It just goes away. And it's got a little jar in there, and then this is what this one looks like. So there's still some liquid in there. Ew, yuck, I just poured it all over myself. And it's already starting to smell like sauerkraut. And see how this is wet? That's gross, so I'm just going to change it. It's like a wet diaper. Like my whole damn life is full of diapers. I shouldn't complain since I only have to change diapers 2 days a week. So, you guys, that's my... Yeah, see, when I've only made sauerkraut in Colorado. And for some reason, it always tasted good and seemed to be effective. But it did not bubble and foam like this. So I'm definitely going to need to put something. I'll put it in a cake pan. Yeah, to catch the overflow. That's a really good idea. So in a few weeks, this will be ready and I'll throw it in the fridge. Ew, yuck. Yeah. Ew, yuck. How disgusting. Let's eat. So about mid-April, this is going to be perfect. Mid-April, and then, so this will be ready. What's today? The 21st? End of April, 1st of May. Every 2 weeks, I'll start some new jars. Yeah. That's how you handle grief and loss, Michelle Wolf style. Cook. Cook, clean, garden, walk your dog, go out in the forest. I'm so blessed to have a creek and the forest right out in front of me and behind me where I can just go sit on a log and cry. Yeah. Just remember to keep breathing. If you're breathing in your pain and you're breathing out peace and love toward those, toward yourself, then toward others, please remember to keep breathing, because your tendency is going to be to hold your breath. And if you hold your breath, you lock that energy in your body. It is, Tanya. It's changing us. It's changing us. I can't wait for you to come visit. Just occurred to you about, yes, people have to do something. Oh, good. Oh, craziness. People have to do something when they're sad. So making a casserole gives them something to do. So let people do for you. If you're the one experiencing the loss, you're going to get 17 tuna casseroles, all of which probably taste like crap. And you're going to eat them and you're going to love it. Yeah, it startled me too. They're jerks. Thank you. My mom bought this for me at a little store down in LJ. So let people cook for you. Let people come over and clean. Let them do what they can do, because they need to move too. Because their grief is triggered and they're processing. Yeah. Yes. Cook, build, garden. The worst thing we've done is to tell people to sit and talk about. Move it. Move your ass. Move your grief. Yeah. Yeah, it helps them and it helps you. Yeah. Yes, they need to move too. And it can be hard to let people do for you. It's because it's instinctual. If we allow our proper instincts, we do what we know we need to do. We move. Unless we've locked our bodies down and told them they are not allowed to move, we instinctually move when we feel a lot of emotion. That's how EMDR works, which is a trauma therapy. I believe it's moving the body. It's moving the energy in the body. Anyway, it's a different topic, different day. Okay, so if you go on Facebook and you read all the horrible stuff and you want to do something with it, let it be a trigger to process your own grief. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Don't hold your breath. If you catch yourself holding your breath, do some more breathing in and breathing out and move somehow today. Good. I love you guys. And thanks for hanging out with me while I make sauerkraut. You can go make some sauerkraut now. It's really good for you. All right. I love you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow. You're so welcome. You're really so welcome. Thank you, too. Thanks for hanging out in my house.